Hey everyone, welcome back to Falcon Central Radio on Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am Aaron Freeman, founder of FalcFans.com. I'm joined by my co-host and partner Scott Karasik, who covers the Falcons for Pro Football Spot. This week we are back once again. This is our last show officially of the off season because this week training camp starts, and we'll actually be able to talk about Falcons football that is actually happening, other than speculating on what may happen. But this week's show, we're going to be talking about Jake Long working out with the team today and what that move means. We'll be breaking down the position by position. We'll be talking safeties and special teams, even though we don't have to spend a ton of time on special teams. And then, as usual, we'll answer your mailbag questions at the end of the show. So, Scott, Jake Long worked out for the Falcons. They gave him a physical. He did not sign today. So, I guess, what is your takeaway from that news?
He didn't sign today because it was a workout today. You normally talk contract the day after the workout. But that being said, I would love the signing. They should have signed him 2 years ago instead of Sam Baker. And I did say that in foresight because I thought Jake Long was way better than Sam Baker, just period. But, I mean, I think he's a third offensive tackle if he's healthy this year. He's not going to be that instant starter. He's not going to be that starting left tackle over Matthews or the starting right tackle over Schrader. He's not what he once was because he's still fighting through injuries. Even if he's healthy, he's not going to be 100% healthy. Now, say he gets to be 100% starting next year, maybe you move him inside, maybe you have him as a backup plan in case you can't re-sign Schrader. But I do think that if the Falcons do sign him, it's going to be a one-year deal. It's going to be very minimal, and it's basically going to be to help him get on his feet as a player again and to get depth out of it. Jake Long is the third offensive tackle. Makes people a lot happier than seeing Lamar Holmes or, God forbid, Tyler Columbus.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Jake Long is going to be the swing tackle. He's basically an insurance policy because it doesn't seem optimistic that Lamar Holmes is really going to be able to compete in training camp because of the broken foot. And I think what the Falcons are looking to do if they sign Jake Long is just basically have a guy that in the event that Jake Matthews or Ryan Schrader get hurt this year during the regular season, they have a guy that they can trust, as opposed to basically right now their plan, if Holmes is not going to be able to play and make this roster, their plan would probably be put Schrader at left tackle and then plug in Columbus at right tackle, and that's a major downgrade. The knock on Long is he hasn't really been healthy since 2009, and the odds are probably very, very, very small that he's going to suddenly become healthy at any point. This is really just him. If he signs with the Falcons, that's just basically like, okay, he wants to play a couple more seasons before he ends up hanging it up. But I think the best case scenario for the Falcons is, and he just tore his right ACL for the second time last season. He's 9 months removed from that. I don't think he's probably 100%, but you're hoping the Falcons sign him so that by the time we get to like September or October, he's close to 100%, close to 100% that Jake Long can possibly be, which is not really 100%. But it's one of those things where you just kind of sign him, you stash him away for the next month or two, and then you just use him as a break glass in case of an emergency type of player. Should you need him in the regular season? If you don't, then he becomes a free agent next year, and you go out and get that long-term developmental swing tackle that you're hoping Jake Rogers might be, but may or may not be, but that's basically the plan. So he's a stopgap, I think.
I'll agree with you there. Worst case scenario is Schrader or Matthews doesn't pan out, and he's that stopgap.
Yeah. I like Jake Long. I've been a fan of his since he came out of Michigan 7 years ago. I agree with you. I was in favor of us signing him back in 2013. I thought he was going to get a lot bigger contract than he got from the Rams. He only got about the same amount of money that I think Sam Baker got, if I'm not mistaken. But we got 4 games out of Sam Baker. The Rams at least got like 20 games out of Jake Long. So kudos to the Rams. All right, Scott, you got anything else you want to say about Jake Long before we move on to the safeties?
Nope.
All right. Well, this is not technically the last position group, but we'll spend about 8 seconds on the special teams afterwards. But this is basically our last real breakdown of the Falcons' positional groups. We're talking about the safeties. There are 8 guys that the Falcons are bringing into camp at safety. Obviously William Moore is going to be the starting strong safety. There are questions. Scott and I have debated this topic before. I guess we'll debate it again tonight about who's going to be the free safety on opening day. And the coaching staff earlier this offseason said it was a 3-way race between Ricardo Allen, Kamal Ishmael, and Charles Godfrey. Allen got all the first team reps in the offseason, so it appears that he's the front runner. And so I already know the answer to this, but Scott can say it officially. Scott, you think there's any chance that he ends up losing the battle?
Yeah, if he gets injured.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I see.
Yeah, I was on the only person on the Charles Godfrey bandwagon. I'm starting to dangle a foot off of that bandwagon as we get to training camps. Hopefully, I can go under the radar. At least I can say if and when Ricardo Allen wins the starting job, I was the first guy to say he has safety potential because I wrote about that in his scouting report I wrote back in May of 2014. So that's my claim. I was 100% right. I'm always right. So that's what I'll go with.
I'm always right.
I thought you liked that, Scott. So
you can hear my eyes rolling.
So if Allen wins the job, I guess what are our sort of expectations for how well he'll do this year?
I'm thinking Kamal Ishmael minus those 3 deep touchdowns he allowed.
Okay.
So turnovers, good deep center coverage. He's not going to be Earl Thomas by any means. Anybody who thinks that he's going to be close is just kind of whacked out in the head. But he could at least be Dwight Lowery if Dwight Lowery fit the scheme.
Okay. I can go with that.
Or Thomas Deku in 2012 if Deku actually wanted to tackle people.
Yeah. Okay. And the real Thomas Deku, not the Pro Bowl Thomas Deku that got invited to the Pro Bowl because he got however many interceptions, but really was just a slightly above average starter that year.
Well, no, I'm saying that Thomas Deku, that Pro Bowl Thomas Deku could tackle, he would have been even better than slightly above average because the knock that year was his run defense. It wasn't his pass defense. His pass defense was great because all he did was sit back in center field and make plays on the ball.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, to me, Thomas Deku was basically the same player he had always been that year. He got to the Pro Bowl because he didn't drop as many interceptions that year that he normally did. Because, people vote on the Pro Bowl based off of how many picks you have and how many tackles you have and, not really examining the player, just production. But
I'll agree with that.
So, okay, we got that down. So I'm assuming Kamal Ishmael is pretty much a lock to be William Moore's backup?
Oh, yeah. Kamal Ishmael's making the roster no matter what happens. And a lot of that has to do with him on special teams. He's a really good gunner on the kick team. He does a good job as a interior gunner on the punt team. You just don't get rid of those guys. If the guy can run down the field and knock someone's head off, you keep him on the roster. If he can also play safety and be a solid backup safety, you keep him on the roster.
Yeah, I'm really kind of looking forward to actually seeing Kamal Ishmael play special teams this year. I remember when we drafted him, I was like, oh, he could be a really good special teams player, like Albert Shelley type of special teams player. But his rookie season, he played like 5 games, so he didn't really get a ton of opportunities. And last season, he was stuck being a starter for most of the season, so they didn't really have him on special teams all that much. And it's like, maybe finally William Moore will be healthy and Ricardo Allen will do his thing. And so it's like, oh, finally this, prediction that I had when Ishmael was drafted, he's going to be like one of our 2 or 3 best special teams players, will finally happen because he'll finally now actually get to play special teams this season. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, crossing my fingers.
I mean, you won't be too far off, put it that way.
So I'm assuming you're thinking they're going to keep a 4th safety. So who do you think that's going to be?
I'm going to go a bit out there and say it's going to be Robinson Teresi.
Interesting.
Because he's the best athlete out of the 5 remaining guys at this point. I don't think Charles Godfrey's any good anymore. At one time, if we were getting Charles Godfrey in his prime when he was 25, 27 years old, he would be starting at free safety. No questions asked. But we're not getting that Charles Godfrey. We're getting an older, more beat up, just kind of mediocre version of Charles Godfrey. So a guy who's played in the league for 7 years and probably, is at that point that William Moore is at where he's not going to be as good as he once was. And I think Robinson Teresi at 22 is way more athletic. And then Terrell Floyd and Damian Parms, they just suck. They're awful. They're not even worth mentioning. But Teresi is a very instinctual player, and he played a lot more of that nickel type third safety in Auburn's defense last year, which was very similar to a 3-3-5 or 4-2-5. And I think that he could do very well in on the Falcons as a free safety with a little bit of underneath safety play working in. But I think he's a better fit to learn that free safety role because he's got the speed and he's got the experience essentially in the middle of the field.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to assume that it's going to be Godfrey that's going to make it just because I think they're going to want to have, a proven commodity back there that can actually play, free safety in case Ricardo Allen struggles once the actual real games and the real bullets start flying. I'll be curious to see if one of those 3 UDFAs do step up, though. And, the thing about Teresi is there isn't a whole lot of a difference between him and Ishmael purely as prospects, because Ishmael was, a late 7th-round pick who was almost undrafted, and Teresi is obviously undrafted. So, but obviously Ishmael has, played well, and shown that he's a little bit better than his draft status. But it's one of those things where if Teresi or, I don't know, Floyd or Parms or whatever play well enough this summer, then I think, there'd be good bets to be on the practice squad. And we'll see what happens in the future. But it'll give the Falcons at least a couple more options to toy with next year.
I can agree there. And then Sean Baker could be a surprise. I do like how he played last year in the preseason. He was a solid free safety going against third stringers, but I just don't know how well he would actually do against real NFL players.
Yeah, I think the knock on Sean Baker is that most of the plays he made last summer, and I agree with you, I thought he played relatively well, were against the run as opposed to in coverage. And I think with Ishmael and those other guys like Tarizi, I don't really think the Falcons need or too worried about having a good run defending safety back there. I think they're really looking for that guy who can be sort of that center fielder. And I don't necessarily know if Baker's ready to be that guy. But I thought he did good things last year, so we'll see. Maybe I can be surprised and proven wrong. But I'll root for the guy, I guess. All right, Scott. We've talked a lot of this offseason about the scheme changes. If you could, I don't know, briefly summarize what are some of the key differences that people will see with how Dan Quinn uses his safeties differently than how Mike Nolan uses his safeties.
Quinn likes to use his safeties in what I like to call a high-low arrangement. 99% of the time, his free safety is playing a deep center field or he's playing a cover one. That's basically his job. He's either center field or cover one. And then rarely he'll drop his free safety down in a blitz, or he'll have his free safety alternate the role with the strong safety and have a strong safety drop deep. But very rarely will that strong safety drop deep. Now, the strong safety plays either a central robber zone where they roam over the middle of the field. They know they've got the deep help, and they just basically attack everything in the middle. Or you're going to have that strong safety cover and man on the tight end, or he's going to come down and blitz depending on the package. So you'll see the strong safety do a lot of different things. And William Moore's and even Kamal Ishmael are both ideal for that role. They're great fits at strong safety in that role because they can do so many different things well, and because they'll rarely be asked to drop deep. Almost, I'd say maybe 5% of the time they get asked to drop deep.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. The one knock on William Moore is always his man coverage, which always got exposed against Jimmy Graham. But thankfully Jimmy Graham, he won't be seeing Jimmy Graham anytime soon. So unless the Falcons go to the NFC Championship or whatever. So so it's not as big an issue this year when he's going to be covering tight ends because he'll still have to cover good tight ends like Greg Olsen twice a year and Austin Safari and Jenkins who's an up and comer and stuff like that. But I don't think we'll see the sort of roastings that were a regular thing with William Moore when he faced Jimmy Graham over the years. That in Quinn's scheme, now that he's gonna be asked to play a little bit more man coverage. But pretty good breakdown, Scott. So appreciate that.
Pretty simple scheme.
Yeah.
Which will be huge for the Falcons.
So let's imagine a scenario where Ricardo Allen struggles this summer. Charles Godfrey is your version of Charles Godfrey as opposed to my version of Charles Godfrey and nobody else. And Kamal Ishmael, and they basically like, no, we're not going to ask Kamal Ishmael to play center field because he clearly can't do that very well. Do you think there's a chance that the Falcons go after and try to get some free safety before the end of training camp, like a trade or off the waiver wire?
I don't know who they get. That's the problem. It's a very weak position throughout the entire league.
That is true.
Now, what they could do is move back Desmond Salward to free safety and just say, hey, this is your spot. You've got the speed, you've got the range, you've got the smarts, but you may not have the coverage instincts just yet. At least go back there and try to knock as many balls away. That's all you got to do. But, I mean, looking through all the different free safeties, I don't see anybody who's going to be cut that could potentially come in and start. Like, maybe Gerard Holloman gets cut by the Steelers, but is he that good if he went in the 7th round? Probably not. Winston Guy's all right. I'm not seeing the great safeties out there. I'm not even seeing great safeties as starters when guys like Charles Woodson are still starting in the league.
You leave Charles Woodson alone. He's one of the greats.
He's one
But
of
you're
the
right.
best safeties and cornerbacks of all time, but he is not one of the best safeties and cornerbacks right now.
That is a fair point. Okay. So I guess next question is any possible surprise cuts. So basically, do you think there's any chance that Moore, Allen, or Ishmael get cut?
I don't think so. I really don't. I also don't really think there's a way Desmond Southard gets cut because it's very possible that all these guys, they cut Godfrey and then Southard ends up being the primary backup at free safety because the cornerback experiment didn't work for him. And he's tall and long and rangy and, basically everything that Vaughn McClure described a Dan Quinn safety to be, except for up here.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance that Southworth gets cut.
I don't. Just because he's still that malleable ball of clay that you got to use. You got to find some way to use him. And it's not like he was awful when he played free safety last year. He really wasn't that bad in the few snaps he played. So I don't understand the thought that he gets cut just instantly when he was way better than Charles Godfrey last year.
Okay, I gotta disagree with you on that one. I think he was pretty bad last year, but to me, I think at this point, I think even though he has the pedigree of being a third round pick, I think with a new coaching staff and not really having an ideal role in this defensive scheme, I think he basically becomes a body. It's not to say that I don't know. Just to me, I think he's a special teams guy. Really, that's all you're really looking for. And I don't think he's a particularly gifted special teams player. He's fast, he can tackle, but there's plenty of guys that are fast and can tackle. So I mean, it's not like he's out there wrecking stuff. So it's just to me, I think he's a body at this point. I think he may make the team, but I don't think the Falcons have to look at him and say, "Oh, this is a guy we definitely need to keep because a year or two down the road we're going to regret cutting him." I think they can find probably anybody, any DB in the 5th round or the 6th round next year that's basically better than Desmond Southward. So I don't know. Okay.
I'll just agree with you on that one.
All right. So let's talk about special teams. So let's talk about these camp battles for special teams, right? Matt Bosher is getting pushed by and Matt Bryant's getting pushed by and Josh Harris, he's competing with I guess we're pretty much good to go on special teams. Same exact unit from last year, so
basically.
So I guess Hester's going to be returning kicks. So I guess my question is, do you think Bernard Reedy will get a little bit more opportunities to return kicks in the preseason, or somebody else? Because we basically, Devin Hester's Devin Hester. He doesn't really need preseason work returning kicks. So maybe we'll get to see somebody else and be like, hey, that guy might be the guy that replaces Devin Hester a year or two from now.
I think if Bernard Reedy returns a kick for a touchdown, it's going to be a tough day when he gets cut.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And as far as, I think you could make an argument that the Falcons special teams unit right now is the best in the NFL, looking at the core of 4 guys.
Yeah, it'd be hard-pressed to come up with a better group of guys.
Josh Harris has yet to have a bad snap in 3 seasons. Matt Bosher is one of the top 5 punters in the game. Matt Bryant's one of the top 5 kickers in the game. And Devin Hester is the best return specialist of all time. Yes, even over Dion. No, that's not sacrilegious to say.
Yeah, man. I'm sitting here trying to think of other really good returners, and Jeremy Ross is the only guy I can think of. But
Dante Hall. But again,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of guys like right now that I would say are better than Hester, and I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. But then again, I haven't memorized all the kick returners in the NFL. So
well, the problem with these great kick returners is that's all they're good at most of the time. So they don't have these long, great careers.
yeah, like Mel Gray and Dante Hall.
Yeah, exactly. Your career punt and return yards leader is Brian Mitchell, who made his nut as a running back, as a third down type running back.
Mm.
And Allen Rossum, who made his nut as a horrible corner. And Josh Cribbs, who actually had value as a receiver.
For like a year and a half.
And your best active guys are Darren Sproles and Devin Hester, who they're basically offensive weapons. You just use them, you put the ball in their hands, you try and clear a good lane and hope for the best.
Pretty much.
So
Oh.
what's interesting to me is that of this top 10 or top 11 all-time special teams list, not a single one of them played for the same team the entire time.
Okay.
Washington, Kevin Williams, Devin Hester, Darren Sproles, Desmond Howard. Desmond Howard was bounced around the league too. Dante Hall, Glenn Milburn, Mel Gray, Josh Cribbs, Rossum, Mitchell. They all played for 3, 4, 5 different teams. Rossum's longest stint was in Atlanta, though.
Yeah. He played what, like 6 years?
Yeah, it was either 5 or 6 years. And Hester might have a nice long stint in Atlanta too if he just stays healthy and keeps up his speed. He didn't look like he was that much slower than he's been. Like, he may not be a 4.25 kind of guy anymore, but he's at least a 4.4 guy. And with his vision, you don't need to be a 4.25 guy.
I think there's a decent chance this is Hester's last year in Atlanta. But we'll see how this year plays out. It depends.
Last year in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. When we were leading up to the draft, the Falcons were working out a lot of kick returners, and it made me think that they're starting to think about the future. He'll be 33 next year. He's got like a 3.5 million cap hit. He's still a good returner. Don't get me wrong, but it just seems that's a lot of money. That may be more money than Dan Quinn and company want to pay. So we'll see. Obviously, if he has another good year, that prediction won't come true. But if he does look like he takes a step back, then I think there's a decent chance they might, clean house at the wide receiver position after the season and cut Hester and Ronnie White.
I don't think they're going to cut Hester. I think what they were doing this year was looking at slot receivers and zone running backs who had a lot of speed and happened to be kick returners.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I think it was just more speed than anything else is what they were looking at.
I hope they don't cut Devin Hester. I'm a fan. I think there's if he has a mediocre season, by his standards, then we'll see what happens. But all right, Scott, you want to get into this mailbag? We got plenty of questions.
Let's go.
All right. At Fonzie1988 asks, are the Falcons going to sign Evan Mathis? Hashtag Pro Bowl guard.
I hope to God that they do. His signing would instantly make the interior line depth one of the better groups out there, with Valerian Ume-Ezekiel, with James Stone, with Chris Chester, all his backups, with Mike Person as a backup. Those 4 guys competing for a roster spot, for 2 roster spots basically, would be awesome. It would be very helpful for the Falcons. Hawley, Asamoah, Mathis on the interior. You'd have Matt Ryan with the best interior 3 he's had since it was Justin Blaylock, Justin Blaylock, Todd McClure, and our boy Harvey Dahl.
Yeah, I hope the Falcons sign Evan Mathis. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't think so, but maybe 25% chance it happens, so it's not impossible. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's it's just that interior offensive line right now is kind of iffy with who's going to be the guy that comes in the event of an injury. Who's that? Six offensive linemen. Um, I guess right now it'd be either Mike Person or James Stone, which is fine, but like I wouldn't want either of those guys starting 5 games this year. I'd rather it be Chris Chester, and if you sign Mathis, then it automatically is Chris Chester. But yeah, so I'd be for it. All right. At Padre 190920 asked a Jake Long question. We'll skip that. We basically answered that earlier in the show. Um, Big Boy Brewski asks, if we don't pick up Jake Long, what other tackles are out there for a bargain?
Anthony Collins.
Gazder Chirulis just got cut.
Gazder Charalus. That's not bad. Chris Hairston.
I think he got picked up by somebody, like the Chargers or somebody.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's basically it. There's really nothing out there.
Yeah, it's like after those two, it's basically Paul Kornick or Gabe Carimi again. That's really about it.
I'd bring back Karimi for depth.
Yeah, I mean, when you're at this point, I mean, you don't really have better options. I mean, if they don't sign Jake Long, you can make a case that Karimi and Cherilus are about the same. So Cherilus is hurt too, so it's not like you sign him, you're gonna see him play. So I don't know. All right, at Cookie by Nature asks, would Jake Long play left tackle and Matthews right tackle in a perfect healthy situation?
If this was 2008 for Jake Long, yeah, but this isn't. This is 2015. He's got 7 years of wear and tear in his body, 2 ACL injuries. I wouldn't want Jake Long playing left tackle this year. If both are perfectly healthy, like 100%, I still wouldn't want Jake Long playing left tackle. I don't want him on right tackle or at left guard. I don't want Jake Long starting this year, though. I don't think he's going to be healthy enough to make it for the whole season. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, if you're talking perfectly healthy for Jake Long, you're talking about '09 Jake Long, and perfectly healthy for Jake Matthews is preseason Jake Matthews. So I guess, yeah, in that situation, if you could time travel and kidnap '09 Jake Long and bring him to the Falcons, that would be the situation. You'd have Jake at left tackle and Jake Matthews at right tackle. But if you're talking about, like, the most healthy that Jake Long could be in 2014, then no, he would be the right tackle. Because the reality is, as Scott said, he hasn't been healthy since 2009. He's had injuries to both knees. He's got 2 consecutive ACL tears. He's had lower back issues. He's had shoulder surgery. He's torn triceps and biceps. I mean, he's basically on his way to be Mark Schlereth, who had like 25 or 28 surgeries over the course of his NFL career at this current pace. So the reality is Jake Long is not going to be 100% ever again. And it's basically just kind of you hope that, he could be 90%. And 90% of Jake Long, of recent Jake Long, not even Pro Bowl Jake Long, but recent Jake Long is not better than 100% of Jake Matthews, or at least future Jake Matthews, and that maybe not 2014 Jake Matthews. But, yeah, so you would probably have Jake Matthews at left tackle or Jake Long at right tackle if we're keeping the parameters to 2014 as opposed to, throughout the last 8 years.
Yeah.
All right. At Evan Birchfield asks, best position battle you're looking forward to?
Oh, that's tough. That's something that you expect to be an easy question, and then You just don't really know. Strong side defensive end is going to be a fun one. Under tackle is going to be a fun one. Free safety is going to be interesting. I don't know. Personally, I'm a big fan of the line, so I'm going to love watching who's going to win the rotational nose tackle spot, for nickel packages, whether it's Grady Jarrett or John Babineau or someone else. That's going to be more interesting to me. But
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm a big fan of line play, especially in the preseason, because you get different combinations of players. Often you'll get you see a guy at left tackle, you see him at right tackle, and you can sort of compare and contrast. Like, for the last 2 summers, Ryan Schrader in preseason has been a lot better left tackle than he has been a right tackle. Obviously, when we got to the regular season last season, that sort of turned around. But for me, it's the position we just kind of talked about with Evan Mathis. It's the interior offensive line. Whether it's Mike Person or James Stone, I'm looking forward to see if James Stone improves. I'm looking forward to seeing if Peter Kahns somehow becomes a viable NFL offensive lineman. If my boy Harlan Gunn takes to the scheme. So it's really that whole position group at guard and center is really what I'm looking forward to. That may not be as sexy as other positions, but if we're talking about after when I'm breaking down preseason tape, that's probably the position group that I'm going to be paying the most attention to. So that's what I'm looking forward to. All right, we got another one from Evan Birchfield. He asks, anyone you would be shocked that could get cut once the cuts start?
Matt Ryan, John Asamoah, Roddy White, Julio Jones. Oh, you mean realistically?
Yeah, I think he means realistically.
I don't know, like Antone Smith. I could see him getting cut realistically if he just doesn't come back healthy from his injury. I'd be shocked to see Levine Toilolo cut, even though he's like fifth string on the tight end depth chart right now, just because I think they're doing that to mess with him and make him focus. I'd be shocked to see Tyler Columbus make the roster. I'd be shocked to see James Stone make the roster, honestly. I don't think he makes the roster this year, even though he started last year due to injuries.
Okay. I think, I would put Southward on this list, but personally I don't think it would be a shock if Southward gets cut, but I know for a lot of people that may be. Another guy I think who isn't on firm footing, I think he'll make the team, but it wouldn't, it would be surprising, but it wouldn't be completely out of left field if he got cut, is Malachi Goodman. I think he's not a lock to make this team, and he really needs to come in, especially now that, he's got some injury issues and might miss the first couple of practices. I think he's going to have to hit the ground running when he gets back healthy, because I think there's a decent chance that a guy like Cliff Matthews or somebody else could pass him up on the depth chart.
I don't think there's any way Cliff Matthews beats Malachi Goodman on the depth chart this year.
Okay.
I would be completely shocked if he got cut. I honestly think it's not out of the question for him to be the starter.
Okay. Yeah, we have different opinions on where Tyson Jackson ends with the team, but I don't think Tyson Jackson's getting cut.
I don't think Tyson Jackson comes close to making the roster.
All right.
When all said and done.
Okay. I guess I would be surprised if Tyson Jackson got cut. I understand why it could happen, but I don't think Dan Quinn's going to make that move. So I'm calling you out, Dan Quinn. You ain't cutting Tyson Jackson.
I'm going to laugh so hard if he does.
Yeah, well, it's kind of reverse psychology, because it's like if I challenge him, then he'll be like, challenge accepted. I'm going to cut Tyson Jackson, and I'll be like, I won either way. So it's one of those things where
you would win either way.
Win-win situation for me.
That totally is a winning situation for you, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, we got one more from Evan Birchfield, and I'll let Scott handle this because he asked basically, for us who haven't been to Falcons training camp, can you describe what it's like? I say Scott can handle this because I've actually never been to Falcons training camp either. So
It's hot. It's muggy. It seems like it'd be fun in theory, but you're watching practice. I've never been a fan of watching practice. I don't feel like you learn anything from watching practice. Like, woohoo, Julio Jones just burned Desmond Trufant because Julio Jones is arguably a top 3 receiver in the league. That's why he burned Desmond Trufant. Part of the reason why Desmond Trufant's so good is because he is forced to go against Julio Jones every practice.
there you go. All right. At sniper_4_life asks, we had 22 sacks last year. If you had to guess, how many do we get this year?
I'm going to be conservative and say 31.
Okay. I say 36, which is about like slightly below league average. I think league average last year was like 38. And that's like a 67% improvement from last year. So I think that's a fair bit of improvement. So I think, 36 is pretty realistic.
I'm not saying that the Falcons won't get a lot of – well, I am saying that. I don't think the Falcons are going to get a lot of sacks, but I do think they're going to get a lot more pressure this year than they have been, which is going to force some bad throws, and I do think they get more turnovers. Because that's more the goal of how Dan Quinn schemes his pressure is it's to create bad decisions by the quarterback more than it's to get sacks.
At Sniper for Life asks the last question we have tonight. Thoughts on Red Lightning?
I wish I cared. It's a fucking ball boy.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited when news first broke that we got him, but like now that I've had to sit on it, like I'm like, hooray, we got a famous ball boy. It's cool, but it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, okay, it was awesome for like a day, and then now it's like, okay, it doesn't really mean anything, so not
Our
gonna.
ball boy is more famous than our running back right now. That's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, unless he's gonna be, trying to get into fights with Gerald McCoy, or I don't know, Fletcher Cox on opening day when they try to tackle Devontae Freeman, then yeah, no big deal. Or maybe we'll see him try to race Julio Jones. That would be cool. He's got the speed. I think he can run like a 4.5. Maybe I don't know. I don't know.
It is not going to work.
Yeah. All right, folks, that is our show this week. Pretty short show. We'll probably have a lot more to talk about next week. But you can follow me on Twitter at FalcFan. Scott has changed his Twitter handle. It's no longer at Scott Karasik. Don't follow that account because it's not funny. No. His Twitter handle is at KarasikPFS. And he's writing for Pro Football Spot. Scott, you got anything on deck for Pro Football Spot in the coming weeks?
In the coming weeks, I'll write something. I've just been kind of taking it easy for a little bit.
Tomorrow I will post my safety training camp preview. This upcoming week I will also be doing my 53-man roster prediction and a couple of guys that are on the bubble. We talked about a few of them tonight. And then training camp starts, and then we'll basically play it by ear, whatever the stories are then. I'll write about that. But yeah, next week, if you want your question, you want to ask a question, use the hashtag Falcons mailbag. Tweet the show's Twitter handle is at FalconsPFC. Follow at PF Central. And yeah, that's it.